being a Blue Angel means you're going to do your best to uphold the idea of being a Blue Angel. It's not the fact that you're any hotshot pilot per se. It's the fact that the idea of what you're trying to show the nation, especially the young people.
But lead pilot and commanding officer Dave CARROLL says it's not really as dangerous as it looks.
I don't really feel that we're in a risky business. Most people consider the type of flying we do to be something like Buck Rogers, but nothing could be farther from the truth.
It takes a great deal of skill and mechanical knowledge and coordination to do the maneuvers that they do. But what really staggers your mind is to see a team do this, such as the Navy Blue Angels, who are here today.
A pilot in the Navy's Blue Angels precision flying team crashed and died in the Southern California desert today. He was practicing formations with 7 other planes. The accident comes 1 month after 4 Air Force Thunderbird flyers crashed in Nevada.
The demonstration pilots, of course, are the stars of the show. But for those 6 men and their jets, there's a crew of 84 men and women, a support team that makes sure the show goes on.
We're just modifying basic techniques that are taught to everybody. We just fly them a little closer together and a little closer to the ground so that the folks can enjoy.
We haven't been to Hawaii since 1972, and this is just a little added attraction to the end of the season for us that really made a very successful season end with the combination of a wonderful weekend, which we're looking forward to.
I actually went down for an interview before I ever got to see a show. And it was interesting. The Admiral said, Commander, I know that you just gave up your command. This is going to be, if you take this job, this is going to be a whole lot different than what you've ever been before. Because I'm sure your junior officers didn't have strong words for you if you didn't do something right. And I can guarantee you that if you don't do it right, this group of aviators will let you know. But that part of it was really pretty straightforward and, in my view, pretty easy. Now, the harder part was learning to fly the A4. I only had 10 hours in it when I got to Pensacola, so I really wasn't terribly familiar with the airplane. The A4 was a superior demo airplane. It was not fly-by-wire. You didn't have an automatic flight control system that told you what you can't do, which is one of the things that the team now has to deal with, is that the F-18 won't let you do certain things, or it'll tap you on the back. But the A4, you could really do some things that were, I thought, part of a superior demo.
It had so much thrust. I think they had better than a 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio. Big engines, stripped down airplanes, and inside the cockpit there was nothing. They took everything out that wasn't essential for flying in an air show. Nothing else. They were hot rods.
It was the most incredible airplane to strap on. You actually strapped the airplane on, and I just loved the airplane. I mean, all the stuff you see from the solos, the roll rate, it was a great formation airplane.
We were at a cocktail party, and I noticed a gentleman standing over talking to a bunch of the team members, and I went over and talked. And it happened to be Ed Heineman, who designed the A4. And he took one look at me and said, I never designed that airplane for somebody like you to fit in it. Of course, at 6'5", when I got in the airplane, I had to run the seat all the way down on the bottom. And then in order to get the canopy closed, I had to turn sideways, reach up, and it was a manual canopy, and had to pull the canopy down.
You could fly it really close. And, you know, frankly, if you clipped a wing or something, it wasn't that big of a deal. You know, you just change an aileron tip.
We used to fly with about 15 to 20 pounds of stick force, And in the A4, it was kind of nice because they had a little toe kick on the inboard side of each rudder, and you could independently adjust each rudder. So I had the left rudder as far out as I could get it, and the right rudder pedal as close to me as I could get it, and that way I could rest my forearm on my thigh and maintain the precision feel of the airplane.
We had a few hours in Pensacola before we flew out to winter training, and of course winter training is high tempo, and you really got a feel for both the airplane, the squadron, and the mission by being out in El Centro.
Your whole world turns blue. Blue flight suits, blue airplanes, blue everything. I load everybody up and head to El Centro, to the desert for winter training. 10 weeks, 13 days on, 1 day off.
Most of the first 2/3 of winter training, you separate the solos and the diamond, so that they're getting all of their individual maneuvers together.
It was quite a grind out there. First brief was before daylight, so you could take off right at daylight, so you could take advantage of the smooth air, and come back, debrief that flight, get a bite to eat, take a deep breath, start the routine all over again.
And the other 6 guys are working on putting the show together. And Bud Hunsucker, who was the number 8 my first year, we became wonderful friends. We unfortunately lost Bud a few years ago. But Bud and I would fly to all the show sites that we were going to do the next year. And of course it's in December and January and February, and we took the 7-jet to places you probably shouldn't take a TA-4, like Juneau, Alaska in the middle of the winter. And we had some close calls, and we were kind of lucky. But I learned how to, I learned a lot of things about the drag chute and the different types of snow. Is it wet snow or dry snow? But that was a great experience.
Big plans going into winter training, and it really came to an unfortunate occurrence.
Good evening. Their skill and daring have always been breathtaking, but today something went wrong, and 4 of the Air Force Thunderbird Precision Flying Team jets crashed into the Nevada desert. The accident happened during what the Air Force called a routine practice mission.
It was like we had lost some of our brothers. Now, many of the team members had known some of the Thunderbirds that were killed.
So that was a big impact to us. We went to Nellis for the memorial service and came back and just picked right up.
That part of it was pretty dramatic in the sense of what happened, what could we do not to have that happen. But it didn't affect our tempo, it didn't affect our attitude in one way at all, other than feeling really badly for the Thunderbirds as a team and the Thunderbirds as the individuals that got killed.
Okay, all right, so this is interview with Lieutenant Commander Stu, how do you pronounce it? Powrie? Okay. Okay, Stu, as one of the newest members of the Blue Angels.
It was the day the solos were supposed to join the Diamond in winter training. In February, 3rd week of February of '82, that we lost Stu Powrie in the desert.
I was at El Centro because I was at the field because I'd done the narration. And of course, I had the brick, and I was listening to what happened, and that was devastating. It was devastating for everybody, and everybody loved Stu. It was really hard on Pogo. Randy Clark, it was really hard on him. I mean, he worshipped Stu. And I think if you talk to anybody that ever knew Stu Powrie, I don't think anybody in the world ever didn't just love the guy. And he was an incredible aviator, and it was a huge loss.
Shortly after the accident, we had to come back to Pensacola at a memorial service for Stu. And then the boss and I were summoned to Washington, D.C. to go back to the Pentagon. And there was a big push from the congressional side of things to shut both jet demonstration teams down, both the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels.
We were in a tough position about not only dealing with the tragedy of losing a friend to now how do we move forward. But then we brought in Jungle Jim Ross, who none of us had really ever met before. I think I met him at one show one time, and he walked into a very tight-knit group. He was out flying F4s off the Midway, And they brought him back in. It had been 2 years since he'd flown his lead solo.
I think I got a call one afternoon and said we had lost another pilot. What a tragedy, what a great guy. They're all great guys, but anyway, had an opportunity to go back to the team again. And everybody was very good about welcoming me back, or not welcome me, but bringing me back, and they were almost finished with winter training when they had their accident. And they treated me so well, and I didn't think it took me very long to get right back into flying inverted low to the ground. In fact, I was kind of surprised. I took an A4 airplane out, or a Blue Angel airplane out by myself. I said, I'd just like to see how it feels to fly one again. And it was painful, pulling all the G again. It hurt. It just absolutely hurt. And when I'd come back and start doing it again, it would pop all the blood vessels in both my eyes, so it looked like I'd been punched in the eyes. And once I had them popped and they healed just in a couple of days, I never had a problem with it again.
So Jungle came back, fit right in, did an excellent job of getting back up to speed in just a matter of time, because you know, this was the third week of February. Our first air show was the second week of March. We did the air show in Yuma, the first show of the year. Came back over to El Centro, and sure enough, we're taxiing out for the air show in El Centro, and as we get to the flight line, the whole short of the runway, getting ready to take off, part of the pre-takeoff checklist is to look for the demonstration field package. When you roll that in, it dumps the elevator on the A4, and so we check each other out. Well, the boss's elevator didn't dump, and so I knew there was something wrong, and I said, boss, check your field. To show you how good the maintenance people are, the cadre of people that are the unsung heroes of keeping us airborne every weekend for the air shows, they came out and determined that the switch was bad in the boss's airplane, but instead of trying to get a spare airplane spun up or whatever, well, then they decided that we would just go ahead, and the boss, I would get out of my airplane, which was sitting right at the whole short with his, he would get in my airplane, and then if his airplane were eventually fixed, which they thought they would, well, then I'd just take off in his airplane. So next thing you know, here's the 3-plane taking off without me, but it's got number 4 as the lead on the tail of the airplane. So after about 2 or 3 maneuvers, they finally, and I can't remember the first class electrician's name, but he was head first in the cockpit of the boss's airplane, feet sticking out. He got the switch replaced, got the airplane fixed. I got in it, started it up, and after the solos cleared the flight line, I took off, went back behind the field, and joined the diamond. So now then, you've got a diamond formation that has number 4 in the front and number 1 in the slot. So when we get to the crowd line after we finish the air show, well, then I had all these questions about, man, you did a great job leading the air show. I didn't know, how did you all train for that? You know, I said, well, we didn't. It was the boss in my jet and me in the boss's jet, and that sort of thing. So that was the start of the '82 year, and it did get better from there on out.
Starting out right here at NAS Atlanta as enlisted man before I went into the officer program and started flying, it's quite a thrill, quite an honor, and really is one of the most unique things I've ever done. The travel involved with it, the people that you get to meet, the people that you're exposed to, the people that you can expose the Navy to and naval aviation to, gives you quite a sense of satisfaction, a sense of pride about what you're doing.
The memories I take from that are all the people I met, the people at the local FBOs when we do. I love the civilian shows because he met all the people on the ground at the FBOs, and I still have longtime friends that I still stay in touch with from Sheridan, Wyoming, and some of these little places that, you know, you'd have 10,000 people at the air show.
The people when I met at air shows and that I took under wings were the people that I felt were underprivileged people, or people that weren't really, you wouldn't normally open your arms to. But those are the people that I sought out, and particularly on top of that, children. Part of the best time was going to the children's hospitals. Although it was rip your heart out, it was very heartwarming to be able to bring a little bit of joy into their lives.
Kids are great fans of the Blue Angels. I loved talking to the kids.
To stand at the crowd line after an air show and have your handful of your little trifold Blue Angel, this is who we are, this is what we do, and sign autographs for the kids. You'd be surprised how many, you don't know it at the time, but if you just happen to strike a chord or touch the heart of one of those youngsters, boy or girl, they could grow up and not necessarily indicate that everybody can be a Blue Angel or everybody can be a Navy pilot, but just a military career in general.
I wanted a job that offered excitement and a challenge when I graduated from college. I found all that and more as a pilot flying for the Marine Corps. I'm Major Tim DINEEN, the Marine flying with the 1982 Blue Angels. If you're looking for a chance to push yourself to the limit, to benefit from your hard work and be one of the finest, maybe you can be one of us. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Being the commanding officer of the squadron was very similar to doing it as commanding officer of a fleet squadron, except that the people that worked for you in the squadron itself were absolutely top-notch. You didn't have to motivate them. They were all self-starters. They took the ball and ran with it. You just had to give them a finite amount of direction and then off they went. So that part of the job was easy.
We had not just 6 guys, we had a whole team, you know, from the best maintenance group I ever worked with in my life to the folks that took care of us administratively, and, you know, a self-contained unit.
You have to understand that the Blue Angels are a unique organization in so many ways. One, they try and choose the best of the best. I'm both enlisted and officers. They come together and it is a committed term for excellence.
Not only were they superb naval officers and professionals, but they were individuals also. And what was nice about it is you got to really know the members of the team, and not just the 6 guys flying the demo, but the maintenance officer and the flight surgeon and the supply officers.
It took all of those people to put that a show in front of the public and do what we were trying to do, and that's make people proud of their nation, make people help recruit.
And they go flying all over everywhere, and as soon as they get out of the airplane, they have to go 100% to get things ready, so when the Blues actually get there, get the show site set up, do whatever maintenance is required before you can start to fly a practice show. Trust me, the maintenance team is truly the backbone of the Blue Angels.
It's a team. It isn't like you have an electronics technician and you have a hydraulics technician and they're separate. What you have is, if you have an engine change, everybody's involved. I mean, you focus on it, you get the job done.
We never, ever walked around the airplane. You know, we did that cursory walk down and then walk around behind the airplane, back around the front, maybe to give the perception of the public that we're really looking at the airplane, but no, they did everything. And I trusted any crew chief, Blue Angel crew chief, with my life. Anything that they say the airplane's good to go, it's good. I'd never question it, never.
Team members come not only from the Navy, but the U.S. Marine Corps too, represent just about every state. At least 3 team members are Georgians, and that includes Lieutenant Commander Al Edmondson, who grew up in Thomaston. He rose through the ranks and earned his post as Blue Angels maintenance officer.
We were in Dayton, Ohio, and we found a problem with the number 5 jet engine mount. So I called up the ops officer and I said, you know, we need to go and get the spare from Pensacola. So Scott Anderson was his narrator at the time, and so called Scott. Scott came out, took 5 jet, headed for Pensacola. We'd alerted them in Pensacola that they were coming, so when he arrived, they had the airplane ready to go. In the meantime, Randy Clark, who was a former narrator, stepped over and took up the narration and narrated the walk down with 5 people walking, 5 airplanes. And as he's doing this, Scott Anderson's landing behind the crowd in that jet. He's met there with they dropped the tanks off it, configured the airplane for the air show. He stepped up on the podium, taking the mic from Pogo, and continued the narration. Pogo jumps up into the car, goes back over, it's all ready for him. We put him in the airplane. He made about the third maneuver in the air show. So we started with 5 and ended with 6, and nobody ever realized that that's what happened. It's just one of those things where they just do the job well.
Bob Hope's 79th birthday, that was obviously something very special. And I'll never forget taking off with him, and I put him on hot mic so he could talk to the controllers and everything. And we came back in, the weather was right at minimums. And I'll never forget on final, I put the landing gear down and the nose gear didn't come down. And I'm thinking, this is just great. I'm going to go down in history as the guy that did a crash landing with Bob Hope in the back seat on his 79th birthday. And I just kept pumping the nose, trying to get the nose gear to come. The nose gear finally came down, and we broke out right at minimums. And I could have pretty much done without that flight. I said, I don't want to be famous for this reason. The guy that killed Bob Hope, that would have been just great. One of the things I'm most proud of is I took 80 people flying and I had 1 person get sick. And that, I didn't think it was my job to go out there and make people sick. And that 1 person had a big, huge breakfast. And but I thought you could show them everything you needed to show them without making them sick. So I was always very proud of that.
Directly before you, the crossover roll.
I always loved the military sites on the West Coast. They were my favorite since I was a West Coast guy. Miramar is always a favorite. El Toro was a favorite. And I love Seattle.
One of the ones that I always remember is Seattle, flying over the lake. What a great show site that is.
Usually I don't like over-the-water shows. The depth perception's not as good, but it's different because the lake's full of boats, so you have a good idea of how high you are off the water.
We flew out to Barbers Point, Hawaii, and that was a lot of fun. We met some extraordinary people.
We did about 2 weeks at Kaneohe Bay and Hickam Air Force Base. We had 2 KC-135 tankers that we were tanking off of. Took off out of California, tanking all the way across the Pacific. Scott developed a pressurization problem, so we gave him one of the KC-135s and him alone, and he dropped down to 10,000 feet, and for the last 2.5 hours of the flight flew into Hickam Air Force Base, low altitude, so he'd be below the 10,000 foot oxygen requirement and that sort of thing.
What a spectacular sight today
I have some very fond memories. I went back about 8 years ago to Molokai, and I was surprised by how many things I did remember, the things that a young kid remembers in the back of his mind. A lot of them came to the forefront when I visited the island with my godfather.
We met the staff of Magnum PI, and they were just wonderful. And another person that I personally met and spent some time with was Ernie Borgnine. He happened to be out there doing something, and he and I had lunch together on our way out to Barbers Point, and he came out and rode with me in the car. And after that, Ernie and I stayed in contact all the way until his death. He was one superb individual.
On the right now, what you've got is a maneuver called the double farball. Number 1 and number 4 airplanes are upside down with 2 and 3 flying on the wing on them. This is called a double farball.
There's no parts of the demo that I didn't like. I mean, everything was fantastic. Everything was challenging, but I always liked the solo stuff the best. by far.
Other than the double Farvel, my second year as a slot pilot, the Diamond 360 was just the epitome of formation flying. I mean, yeah, when you add the solos and get all six, and the Delta landing was the other one when you had all six, but to me, the Diamond 360 bottomed out at Show Center, and you're just in there and just working your buns off to be as smooth and in position as you possibly can. It was a great maneuver.
We as solo pilots would always say, oh my gosh, you know, we don't want to go fly formation with the Diamond pilots in the Delta. We just hated that. But that's not true. Of course we loved it, but that's what we always told us, the Diamond pilots. The solo stuff was the most fun though. I loved the horizontal rolls and flying upside down, and I loved the negative G half Cuban 8 we used to do. I just loved all of that stuff. Wow, that was very challenging.
The back-to-back roll was one of the ones I really enjoyed. Jim Ross, call sign Jungle, did an absolutely fantastic dirty roll on takeoff. He, of all the ones I have seen on all the years subsequent to that, I thought Jim Ross's dirty roll on takeoff was the best I'd ever seen.
When we came back after an air show, typically we'd arrive back on a Sunday evening, we'd have Monday off, and then Tuesday practice, Wednesday practice, Thursday we'd leave for the next show site. But meanwhile, we had 2 to 3 spare airplanes that set around back at Pensacola, and they would like to have somebody fly those. I always flew the spares. I always volunteered to come in on Sunday to fly them. So when I did, whenever I had a takeoff, I'd always do a dirty roll. Every time. It was great, just the greatest.
The end of the season in '82, you know, we shake hands and it's all over and we're done, and the new guys are there, they're ready to take over. They're already taking your nameplate off the parking spot on the side of the hangar, so you can get out of there and they can park next to the hangar and that sort of thing. It's just nostalgic.
I think that the 2-year rule is a wonderful rule. You become acclimated to the shows, you're comfortable in the airplane, but when you think about this as doing a long term, I think that whoever made the rule, it's 2 years, made an absolutely great idea. I was ready to go back to the fleet. I was loving what I was doing on the Blues, but it was time to try another challenge, and to be honest with you, it was time to go back to sea flying off aircraft carriers. And that's what I was looking forward to doing.
I was definitely ready to move on, and I was looking forward to going back in. I just wanted to be a fleet pilot, just another fleet pilot. That's all I ever wanted to be, was a fleet pilot. I can't quite say that. I mean, I wanted to fly in the Blue Angels for sure. I wanted it with all my heart, but I wanted to be a naval aviator, and I wanted to be able to walk away so nobody ever pictured me as a Blue Angel pilot, but as a naval aviator, just like everybody else wearing their green flight suits. So that's what I tried to do.
My best takeaway has been the people I met, especially my first year, that I still stay in touch with. Some of these folks that, you know, they were just good, salt-of-the-earth folks. I'm a blue-collar guy at heart, and I loved meeting some of these people.
There's just a general camaraderie of a unique group that once you are one, you're always going to be one. Entry level is high, but once you're there, there's nothing like it in any place in the Navy that I know of.
The 2 years I spent on the team were unforgettable. I still think about it often, and it always makes me smile. As a matter of fact, I was talking to one of the team members the other day for the first time in 25 years, and just hearing his voice brought back many, a flood, if you will, of good memories.